Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre. The Honorable Minister for Tourism is also here with us, as well as you, the members of the media, those of you tuned in via various media. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. Today, the Honorable Prime Minister will provide some brief updates as usual, but he's really here to hear from you and take your questions on the issues you deem most pressing to the Dominican people. We will also hear from the Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre, the Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, and Social Security. Please welcome the Honorable Prime Minister.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Honorable Dr. McIntyre and the Press Secretary and Minister Charles, and all of you, the wonderful folks from the press, and those who are following the live broadcast of this press conference. This press conference, as you know, is in keeping with our commitment to meet more regularly as part of the whole concept of the national reset, engaging ourselves in public discourse and matters affecting the population, and to allow you to quiz myself and ministers on our stewardship of the country. I wish to begin by providing a quick update on my recent participation in the CARICOM Regional Symposium on Crime and Violence as a public health issue held in Trinidad earlier this week. It was a timely engagement of regional heads and other stakeholders, which allowed for crucial dialogue aimed at mobilizing regional action for violence reduction and crime prevention. In some of our jurisdictions, we have seen a recent surge in crime, which have deeply impacted communities and hold long-term implications for the social and economic growth of our people and countries. Coming out of the meeting, CARICOM heads agreed to ban the use of assault weapons in civilian populations and to appeal to the United States for stronger action against weapon manufacturers and the flow of guns and ammunition from the United States into the Caribbean region. This bold step reflects our commitment to tackling the root causes of violence and creating a safer environment for our people. It also recognizes the need for a collaborative approach with our neighbors to the north to address the movement of these weapons into our countries. I certainly look forward to further dialogue and action on the proposed measures. Dominica will, of course, play its part to introduce the necessary legislation and structures to give effect to the decisions taken. You would have heard me reiterate at the symposium my long-held belief in the need for education reform, and indeed a paradigm shift in our education system. I advocated for a comprehensive review of the education system across the region to allow for a greater focus on the overall well-being and welfare of our children. I am happy that my proposal found favor with all heads and indeed all participants at the symposium. Traditionally, we have focused heavily on the academic performance of our children without taking into account their diverse backgrounds and social and economic circumstances so that we could better understand their behaviors and cater to their special needs. This narrow focus on academics can lead us to neglect essential life skills, emotional intelligence, and social development, all of which are crucial for the development of well-rounded individuals who can positively contribute to our society. I continue to call on all stakeholders, parents, guardians, the clergy, and the business community to take responsibility for the care and support of our children. These are matters I have discussed previously with our education administrators. I will again place the matter of curriculum reform on our agenda for consideration, consultation, and implementation, and update you accordingly on our efforts. As a matter of fact, I intend to meet with all principals of government schools within the next 2 weeks to discuss my observations and my recommendations on how I believe we can improve the conducive environment for students to be wholesome children in our society. And I think it is quite fitting and at the right time for Dominica to take the lead on this matter. And I intend to certainly take the lead on this matter of education reform across the region. Tuesday, April 25th, 2023, we shall convene Parliament at 10 a.m. And on the agenda for this meeting of the House of Assembly are the family bills which seek to improve the circumstances of our women, children, and elderly and offer them greater protection, care, and support under our laws. And of course, the last time I spoke to you, the press, I raised concern about the need for us to go with what we have that are ready. And I'm happy that that the appropriate authorities have responded with alacrity, and we're going to Parliament on April 25th to pass a number of laws. And so the bills include measures to provide for the equal status of children, meaning that all discriminatory provisions in the law relating to a child born out of wedlock will be removed. This measure will ensure that all children have equal status under the law, regardless of the marital status of their parents. Importantly, it also addresses matters of succession and inheritance, which means that every child in Dominica, insofar as the treatment by the parents and the treatment and the recognition under the law, and in terms of inheritance, if the parent were to die without a will, that every child will be treated equally under the law. And I see smiles from the media. An act for a law relating to maintenance of children will also be introduced to conform with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. The law will seek to improve on the existing provisions related to the obligations of both parents to maintain a child, the specifics of the maintenance order, duration of the order, and method of payment, among other related matters. The issue of child maintenance is always current and a matter of great importance, especially for single parents and children within our communities, who are placed at great disadvantage when one parent shirks his or her responsibility to provide timely and adequate financial support for a minor child. The bill will regularize these situations and provide our children with security and protection. Government will also introduce a bill for an act relating to the maintenance of spouses and parents. The act makes provision for these two groups in our society who may be left vulnerable and unprotected under the law. It provides for the reasonable maintenance of spouses after cohabitation has ended, meaning after a relationship has ended or dissolved. The act also addresses the care and support of parents and grandparents who are in need of maintenance by reason of age, physical or mental infirmity, or disability. Against the background of devastating incidents of domestic violence late last year, we will see the introduction of a bill for an act to provide greater protection for victims of domestic violence and for the granting of protection orders to promote their safety. And there's also a bill for an act to provide for the care and protection of children as relates especially to adoption services. These bills are of great significance to our society, as they will help us ensure that the rights and responsibilities of family members are protected in any situation, and that they are treated fairly and equitably under our laws in Dominica. So there are 5 separate laws which will be taken to Parliament, all dealing with the welfare and well-being of our citizens, especially the vulnerable, the children, and domestic violence cases. Cabinet has approved, in advance of the passage of this legislation, has approved a new structure for the Social Services Department for the more effective and efficient administration of welfare matters relating to the care of children, women, elderly, and other vulnerable groups. The Welfare Division will operate within this new structure with an increased staff complement. The newly structured department will also provide support for family laws, which will go before Parliament on Tuesday to ensure they are properly implemented and monitored for effectiveness. And just to say to you that the increased budget just for salaries for this new structure will be close to $400,000 per annum, in addition to the existing budget for the welfare department and other departments of the government. A subunit of the criminal investigations unit of the police force will be created to focus solely on reports of child abuse and domestic violence in Dominica. And those officers will be provided with proper training so that we are more responsive to those calls for investigation and ensure that investigations are successful and resources are placed for investigations. But again, the welfare of a child cannot be relied only upon by the state, by the government. And domestic violence will not end only by the passage of laws and the provision of resources. It's going to require the involvement of the entire community to play its part, entire society. These are societal challenges, and societal challenges require societal responses. This is not a road or road patching. This is about the human being and the role that the society can play in ensuring that we eliminate the instances of injustices against our children and the presence and the prevalence of domestic violence in our society. But we go to Parliament with some very strong modern laws, which we believe, if properly implemented, will help in curbing the incidents of injustices against our children and the vulnerable in our society. But again, it requires a societal response to deal with. And so I will show, and in respect to electoral reform, I will assure you that I remain committed to the passage of the necessary legislation in Parliament to modernize Dominica's electoral system. I will say to you that I'm very disappointed that as of April 21, 2023, I have not received the final set of proposals to advance to the public and ultimately the Parliament of Dominica. This is by no means a criticism of the efforts of Sir Dennis Byron, but more of a commentary on the challenges besetting us in a post-COVID environment and the backdrop of the tremendous consultations and research that go into the preparation of the needed report and subsequent recommendations. I share the general view that this is a matter that must be addressed with urgency. Upon receipt of the report, we will conduct the necessary consultations in an expedited manner as possible, with the objective of implementing the recommendations to the satisfaction of the Dominican populace. As a matter of fact, I took the opportunity on the margins of the recent symposium in Trinidad to update CARICOM heads on our efforts with regards to the modernization of our electoral process, and also seeking the further involvement of the CARICOM Secretariat in the effort of advancing the electoral reform process in Dominica. Ideally, I really want to see this thing done with and set aside, and we focus our energies and our resources on other equally important issues confronting the Dominican population. And so I do hope very soon we shall receive that final set of recommendations and take it to the Dominican population for consultation and ultimately to the Parliament. And I want to say to the public very sincerely that this is a matter of priority for me and for my government, and I will continue to provide you with regular updates. I thank you, and I therefore now take the opportunity to invite our Minister of Finance, Dr. Irvin McIntyre, to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. Let me recognize Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, our Prime Minister, other members of Cabinet, permanent secretaries, the listening and viewing public, and you, the media. Good morning. Last week, I attended the World Bank IMF spring meetings in Washington, D.C. The World Bank and the IMF jointly convene 2 meetings of their constituents every year. These are the spring meetings held normally during the month of April, and the annual meetings which are normally convened in October to discuss and find solutions to global and regional issues. These meetings afford countries the opportunity to engage bilaterally with IMF and World Bank staff on national issues. Additionally, we participated in meetings organized by the Commonwealth Secretariat. Some common themes dominated last week's meetings. 1, the need for the G20 countries and international financial institutions to increase concessional financing to small island developing states, like Dominica, given our high vulnerability to climate and exogenous shocks. In my mind, access to concessional financing, especially climate funds, is the #1 priority for small developing states. We discussed the limited fiscal space of several small island developing states. You would be well aware of the measures that governments, this government included, have to put in place to respond to COVID-19, and on the heels of that, the impact of global inflation and the tightening of financial conditions. For Dominica, our situation is compounded by the continuing response to Hurricane Maria. Several of the measures which were implemented to respond to these shocks remain in place and directly impact fiscal outcomes. Countries were encouraged to put strategies in place and implement plans to build resilience, including fiscal resilience against these shocks. This Dominica is already actively implementing, with some progress already being seen. And fourthly, discussions also centered on the efforts of regional countries to transition from fossil fuel towards renewable energy. Here again, Dominica is well advanced with our geothermal development project, with testing just completed on a second production well and the completion of drilling of the reinjection well, ahead of the construction of the plant. All of these areas, which I have just mentioned, are critical elements in achieving above average and sustainable growth. Our bilateral meetings with the area and functional departments of the IMF and World Bank were very productive. We discussed and were able to secure support for our technical assistance requests, all aimed at strengthening capacity within the public service. Within the Ministry of Finance, a broad cross-section of areas, including revenue administration and policy, statistics, public finance management, and financial sector supervision were identified for technical support. With the World Bank, the focus of our discussion was the various projects which were being jointly financed by the government and the bank. We also met with the executive directors of both the IMF and the World Bank. These are the officers who represent us on the executive board of these institutions. In both cases, we were reassured of their commitment to represent our interests at the level of the board. Prior to my visit to DC, the IMF completed an Article 4 mission. As a government, we always welcome IMF to Dominica every year in the advance of budget preparation to undertake an independent assessment of the performance of the economy as well as government finances. The key findings of the IMF Article 4 mission included the following. 1, Dominica's economy grew by an estimated 6.9% in 2021 and 5.7% in 2022. The growth was driven mainly by the construction of climate-resilient infrastructure, a substantial rise in agricultural outputs, and a rebound in tourism since the lifting of restrictions related to COVID-19. Secondly, government has been able to implement its public sector investment program and respond to the recent economic shocks because of high CBI revenues. Government's debt is projected to decline slightly to 98.7% at the end of calendar year 2023. As government has had to acquire debt to respond to several shocks since Tropical Storm Erika in 2015. Note that at the end of fiscal year 2016-2017, debt was at 69% of GDP. I should also let you know that the target for 2035 by the Monetary Council of the ECCB is 60% by 2035. And in 2016-2017, we were at 69% already. We assured the fund that we are taking action to reduce our debt as percentage of GDP by one, increasing our investments, particularly in sustainable development enablers and initiatives in order to grow Dominica's GDP. Secondly, limiting additional borrowing. And thirdly, through the recently approved and soon to be established debt repayment fund to accelerate repayment of debts. The fund has also recommended that government continues to implement measures to reduce recurrent expenditure and increase revenues. Some suggestions were made by the fund. However, these were merely suggestions, and the cabinet would have to decide on a plan of action. Fourth, the financial sector remains stable, and no concerns were raised in regard to the banking sector. The fund had indicated that banks are liquid. However, the private sector has not accessed as much financing as expected in an environment where strong growth has been recorded. Government was commended for its investments and special initiatives to facilitate the growth of micro, small, and medium enterprises. Overall, the economic outlook for Dominica looks positive, although we need to remain mindful of the volatile global environment as well as possible impacts of future natural disasters. The fund advised the continued implementation of growth-friendly projects, such as the International Airport and the Geothermal Development Project, while we work to continue to improve government fiscal position and support the vulnerable. By and large, we are satisfied and in broad agreement with the assessment of the fund. Our next step is to review the specific recommendations within the context of our own plans. Most of these will focus on enhancing growth opportunities and measures to improve fiscal and debt sustainability. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Dr. McIntyre. At this point, the Prime Minister and Dr. McIntyre will take your questions. Several of you have told me over the past 2 weeks that you're eager to address some issues. Curtis, I think you want to go first?
Thank you very much. My question is for the Prime Minister of Dominica, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit. Mr. Skerrit, a promise was made with the construction of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital that fewer people from Dominica would travel for medical attention abroad. But the statistics I've seen do not really suggest that fewer people in Dominica are traveling at the moment for medical attention abroad. I would like you to comment on that, sir. And a follow-up question to that would be, Dr. Dexter James from Trinidad left in October, November last year as Chief Executive Officer of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, Dr. Dexter James. He left October, November 2022 as Chief Executive Officer of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. Some announcement was made that there would have been a replacement. Can you bring us up to date on whether, in fact, a replacement has been in place or whether anybody's been considered to take over? That's my first round. I'll come back in the second round shortly.
With respect to the Dominica China Friendship Hospital and the services which are offered at that modern upgraded facility, I believe that the Hospital Authority and the Ministry of Health, and I've said so before publicly, that they need to speak more to the population and to inform the Dominican population on the services which are being offered at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. I believe that the average Dominican is not sufficiently aware of the extent of the services, especially new services that have been offered at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. They need to provide you, for example, the number of people who have been subjected to care utilizing the HIFU machine, for example. The statistics on that. And how many of these people ordinarily would have required to travel for medical care. They need to give us, for example, how many people have been subjected to investigations by the MRI, for example, who would have to have traveled to Antigua in particular and beyond in Barbados to seek those interventions. The eye care facility. I've been told, and Dr. Ricketts indicated so when they were commissioning the facility, that we have the most modern and advanced eye care clinic in the OECS. And how many people would have been required to go out to Dominica to access those facilities? We have more theaters than previously we had under the Princess Margaret Hospital. And how many people have been provided with interventions by this facility? The oncology department. How many people would have traveled to Dominica prior to the construction of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital for oncology investigations and care and treatment? The cardiology department, with the presence of Dr. Andrew, the presence of our Chinese medical cardiologist expert. How many people would have traveled to other countries to seek investigations in matters relating to their cardiology, et cetera, et cetera? So I think that the issue there is that we're not getting, we're not being provided, and it's not a criticism of anybody, because as the Prime Minister, I take responsibility for anything that goes wrong in the country. The positive happening, people can share it among themselves in terms of the praise. But this hospital is more advanced now than it was prior to its construction. And I think more needs to be done to inform the Dominican public of the services that are happening there. Obviously, there are people who choose sometimes to go overseas for medical care. It is not because they are being referred to by a specialist, but they choose to go for one reason or the other. And I have seen where doctors have said to certain patients that we can treat you in Dominica, but the person decides, I want to go overseas. My daughter is in Guadeloupe, or my uncle is in the United States, I want to go and get medical care. Not because it can't be provided here, but people decide to go overseas and so forth. And when they come back, they have to be treated here in Dominica after having spent tens of thousands of US dollars to get medical treatment. So I think there has to be an appreciation for the facts and for the circumstances and where we are with regards to the evolution, or indeed the revolution, and the provision of healthcare in Dominica, and so forth. We need to find out how many orthopedic surgeries have been conducted at the hospital. And while I'm on this question, it's a very important question, I appreciate the question, I want to speak more broadly about the issue of the financing of the hospital. There's a policy in place in the government that people 18 and younger and 60 and over will be provided with free medical care. As long as I'm in the Prime Minister of the country, it's not going to change. This is a fundamental principal position, and in conformity with international requirements, that we need to ensure that every citizen has access to medical care, irrespective of your economic circumstances. The reality is the Ministry of Health never implemented the policy of the government properly. We indicated as part of that policy decision that those who have insurance and who fall into those categories would be required, their insurance would be required to pay. That was never implemented, that aspect of it. Because sometimes when I propose measures in this country that benefit the people, there are people within the system who are opposed to it. And because they're opposed to it, they don't go about implementing it the way that I have articulated in the policy. And I take the blame for it. That's fine. I'm the leader of the country. But not because I don't speak to those things. And I think I need to start speaking about those things. And my own circumstance as the leader of the country in advancing policies and the pushback of the system. Our country, I believe, if people will listen to me more, will be more advanced than it is today. Because time for me is priceless. What I can do today, we should leave for tomorrow to do. You understand? And so, people who have insurance were required to pay. But because the Ministry of Health then, they were opposed to this progressive policy. And I will tell people in Dominica too, that when I went to Cuba, and I sat down with President Hugo Chavez and President Fidel Castro, we come up with a master plan to advance the healthcare in Dominica, as presented by me. And Hugo Chavez was prepared to finance it financially, buying the equipment, and President Fidel was providing the human resources. That is why you realize in Portsmouth, we introduced a whole set of diagnostic tests, including X-ray machines in Portsmouth. And Fidel Castro, President Fidel May, soul rest in peace, sent me 15 medical practitioners to man the Portsmouth Hospital. And the intention was to transform Granby into a polyclinic, to transform Castlebrooks into a polyclinic, to transform Lapley into a polyclinic, to transform St. Joseph a polyclinic. And this is how we got the ICU for the first time. And when I introduced the ICU into Dominica, people in the Ministry of Health were opposed to it. I had to go myself as Prime Minister of the country and to go and fetch a location for the ICU unit, where it should be placed. And to, at the first time in our history in 2005, we ended up having an ICU unit in Dominica. And we in Dominica must stop this notion of researching for little things that are not working properly, and we want to blow it up, and we don't pay attention to the many positive things that are happening and give God thanks for it. You understand? Where we are at the hospital is a dramatic change from the Princess Margaret Hospital to now. I think, and when people criticize this, the delivery of services, I believe that the vast majority of doctors are diligent in their services. I believe the vast majority of nurses are diligent in their services. You'll always find one or two people with an attitude. It might be a domestic problem they have. It might be they slip wrongly. They may be on the shift for a long time, and several people come in and they become anxious and so forth. You understand? And some of them might just have an intrinsic negative attitude. But you can't blame me for that. I can't be held responsible for that. You see what I'm saying? So I think, Curtis, in respect to your question, I believe that we need to provide more facts to the Dominican public, more information to the Dominican public, so that we can know exactly what's happening in the country and so forth. So there are a lot of things I can talk about, but I don't want to delay the press conference on this. But certainly, and it's something that we can have further discussions on, and maybe have a new, wider expose on the delivery of healthcare facilities across Dominica. And sadly, in Portsmouth, we did not manage the facilities properly in Portsmouth. Right? And so the X-ray machine no longer works in Portsmouth. Because my vision was that the now Dominica China Friendship Hospital would have been more of a secondary and tertiary institution. And so if I am from Pennville and I have a fracture, there's no need for me to come to Rosa to get an X-ray done. It could be done in Portsmouth. If I'm from Wesley or Marigot, I don't need to come to Rosa to get an X-ray done. It can be done in Portsmouth. And we bought, with the financing of the government of Venezuela, President Hugo Chavez, we bought some of the most advanced medical and diagnostic equipment. They're all made in Germany, which is one of the top manufacturers of medical equipment. So they were not little cheap things, top of the line equipment. And the Venezuelan government was providing all of the supplies that you require. You understand? And the intention was to have several polyclinics across Dominica. And this is why we brought the Cubans to train Dominicans. We started with 100 Dominicans to train as nurses. We ended up graduating about 82 out of the cohort of 100. And even when I brought them, the Cubans, 17 Cubans came to train nurses in Dominica. And my plan was to have enough nurses at any given time in Dominica to the point where we could export nurses to counteract the recruitment of our nurses by the Treasury, Her Majesty's Treasury of the UK government and the US Treasury. We can't compete with them. These are the kind of things that we've been doing. So, and I think too that this government has a plague because the government is not telling people enough of what it has been doing for this country. And so the people who say no, nothing has been done, or Skerrit not doing nothing, and no. People need to, those of us who are 23 years or older, must reflect on where this country was when I became Prime Minister of this country. And where it is today. Notwithstanding all of these natural disasters, notwithstanding all of the pandemic, all of the external shocks that we've had in the economy, here we are today. So, and in respect to there's been a new CEO in place. It is a St. Lucian, and it's Miss Nancy Francis, who has been approved on the recommendation, approved by the cabinet on the recommendation of the hospital authority. So there is in fact a CEO who's been approved by the cabinet based on an extensive recruitment exercise conducted by the hospital authority.
Is that person already in place?
Well, the effective date would have been April 1. So we'll have to find out from the hospital authority whether that person is here and so forth. See, I try not to get involved in the day-to-day administration. Contrary to what people think, I am aware of everything happening in the country as far as possible. But these administrative things, I try not to interfere in. Yes.
We still on the hospital here. Try to run away, but we like.
As you want me to?
Yes.
Please.
You spoke about from 1 year to 18 years, and then we're going to move to the middle age. But the fact remains also, yes, you spoke about the equipment, but there's no money.
That's not true.
I come in in terms of money and in terms of the maintenance of the equipment, the people are having difficulties. And one of the things that they are saying, and maybe you need to speak about that, is that when people come in there to do the necessary works, one, they give false addresses, false telephone numbers. Also, and I wrote that story, they steal things at the hospital, the toilet paper and all those things, and the authorities are crying.
The issue of no money is not true at all. We have always financed the hospital. The government is still financing 100% of the hospital operations. There, people know me, and people know my position on health and education from an ideological and philosophical position. And the Labour Party, ideologically and philosophically, the Labour Party promotes two essential aspects of our society: health and education. And the record is there to show. So we want this. Clearly, there is some vandalism and theft taking place at the hospital by people who go to either visit people or who go to get services. People are stealing the hand sanitizers. People are stealing even toilet paper. People are stealing the soap liquid. People are defacing some aspects of the building. And we have to speak about this and not make it look like it is the Ministry of Health and the government that's not providing the hospital with these things. People are stealing them. If you go into the hospital now, all of the hand sanitizers, they're empty. People come there, either they pull away the stuff, or they come with containers and they squeeze the stuff and they fill the container and they go home with it. People take toilet paper, people take soap. I mean, it is really troubling and so forth. So we have to, this is the issue there. The issue of wrong addresses. I think the average person has an ID. I believe that the Ministry of Health, the hospital authority, I've been told, is working on a better billing system to ensure that persons who receive medical care and who have a bill pay for for these things when they receive the service and the bill comes that they have to pay. I think that we have to upgrade the issue of the payments by the health insurance companies and to have the appropriate insurance information. So I think the hospital authority, along with the Ministry of Health, needs to work on the billing system. The issue of IDs and people not having given wrong addresses, then I think that is an administrative issue that needs to be dealt with at the hospital level, so that they can get as accurate information as possible on those persons who receive medical care, and those things. But in respect to the financing, and the other issue that we want to raise, Carly, is that, and unfortunately it appears that I am almost a lone ranger who is advocating in respect to CNCDs in Dominica. And to be honest with you, I feel a sense of emotion and sadness about this, because I don't believe that the population understands and appreciates the impact on the society and on families, the prevalence of CNCDs in Dominica. You understand? When you have a 40-year-old having a leg amputated and she has 4 children, single parent, what do you think is going to happen to this family? Or she gets a stroke. One side of her body is paralyzed. What do you think is going to happen to this family? The sheer cost of treating these people. And every year the cost increases. When we could cut this cost by half if we provide more education, more advocacy, more information to the general public on how we can manage our well-being and our health. And people like to talk about roads and this thing. I'm saying to us in this country that this thing is serious. There are too many men who are 40 years and older who have never seen a doctor in 60 years. And then by the time you go to the doctor, you can't get treated for prostate anymore because it's too advanced. And maybe it has gone to other organs in your body. And so we have to spend more time in this country. And this is why the health promotion unit has to be completely restructured. This information, and it's only in the midst of the entire society, in the school system, the public service, and this is why we're encouraging people to exercise and to eat properly. It is a serious, serious, serious threat to this country. And the media has a role to play on this. You know, all of us, we should not, showing empathy and showing genuine care should not be only when it affects our families that we speak about these things. It has to be about your concern for somebody else. And this is from the vantage point which I speak. It's a very serious issue in this country, and I am pleading, literally pleading, and beseeching the population to join me, please, in this fight. It's a fight for our survival. It's a fight to protect our economy. It's a fight to protect the citizens of this country from this scourge called CNCDs. And failure to act in a proactive and preemptive manner, I'm sad to say that it may be, we will run the risk of being in a situation where we'll say it's too late. But it's too late. But I'll leave it at that. I'll put it to Matt.
Good morning. Good morning, Prime Minister. Good morning, the Finance Minister and everybody present. 2 questions that maybe you or the Finance Minister might be attempting to answer.
If it's difficult, I'll pass it to the Minister of Finance. If it's easy, I'll take it.
Okay. PM, you estimated that the cost of building the international airport will be about $1.3 billion. How much has been spent to date, and what is the financing arrangement with that developer?
Well, the cost certainly in excess of $1.3 billion, I said, EC dollars. As far as we know, obviously the way the structure works, as I indicated, and we've explained this before, let's reiterate, that we have entered an agreement with a developer to build the airport on behalf of the people of Dominica, utilizing the Citizenship by Investment Program. And it is the developer who has to use our CBI program to raise the financing to finance the construction of the airport. So as it is, the developer is the one who would have signed the contract with the contractor to build the international airport. There's absolute no sovereign guarantee on the part of the state. So there's no financial or legal liability in respect to the engagement of the contractor by the people of Dominica, the Treasury of Dominica. The liability rests solely and absolutely with the developer. You understand? As far as the reports is in there, the contractor has been paid the mobilization fee. I don't have the precise figure with me here, so I don't want to tell you about this. The mobilization fee. Obviously, there's a schedule of payments based on the agreement or the contract with the contract between the contractor and the developer, and they'll be paid in stages based on the payment schedules and so forth. So this is how the financing works. So under the CBI program, similar to the construction of a hotel under the real estate, the only difference is that the state owns the airport. So the airport will be the state airport, and the state will determine who manages the airport on its behalf and so forth. So this is where we are. This is where we are with regards to the airport and so forth. I'm being told approximately US EC $70 million have been provided to the contractor from our end, government end, but we're talking about the contractor end. Now, if the contractor would have gotten much more than that from our end, but so this is where we are with regards to. So the liability is with the developer. The developer is the one who signed the contract with the contractor. The developer will be the one who will be responsible for raising the funds and paying the contractor, and the project is in fact the people of Dominica's international airport.
All right, my second question to you, the finance minister. The IMF is recommending in its last report there the reduction of public sector wage bill. If the government accepts this recommendation to improve the fiscal performance, will government cut salaries of public officers and send home public servants, or the combination of both?
It's slightly higher than Minister of Finance pay grade, so I will deal with it. What the IMF is saying is that we have to be mindful of the growth of the public sector wage bill in respect to its impact on the GDP, or a percentage of the GDP. What we're seeking to do within the public service is to build greater efficiency and to increase and improve on productivity. I can say to you very clearly, for the avoidance of any misrepresentation or misunderstanding of what you're saying, there is no intention on the part of the government to send anybody home. There is no intention on the part of the government to cut salaries. As a matter of fact, there is a reclassification exercise that will see the increase of salaries for many of the public positions that we have within the public service. So there'll be no reduction in cutting people's pay. There will be no levy imposed on your salary at all. No one will be sent home. There'll be no termination of positions within the public service. Absolutely, this is not a consideration. What the government is doing by way of investments in the economy is to grow the economy so that there can be access to more revenue will be generated, tax revenue will be generated, so that we can set aside any of the challenges that you have where spending is concerned. What we're also doing is to cut on discretionary spending. So traveling overseas. We have cut on this dramatically since COVID time. Only essential travels are done, or if it's financed by external agencies, so things that will not impact the proper delivery of government services. We have cut those areas, and this is why the IMF has congratulated us on our social safety net programs and ensuring that we continue to provide for the vulnerable, especially in difficult times. And people must understand the extent of the cost of this to us in Dominica. It's huge, but we believe it's necessary, absolutely necessary, and we're committed to that. So there'll be that's a simple question, simple response to your answer, no cut to the public service. As a matter of fact, the police will be paid. As you know, the police had raised an issue for us with regards to the off days that they were entitled to. So we've been having discussions with the Police Welfare Association. The only delay in that is because there were no proper records outside of the SSU unit with regards to how many rest days officers would have had. And so we come to an agreement with the Police Welfare Association where there were no recorded rest days, especially in the out districts. And so the amount will be in excess of $2.4 million. And I wish I was a police officer now, And those payments will be made at the end of May. So over $2.4 million will be paid to the police in lieu of the rest days. So it's good news for the police, and I want to commend the Police Welfare Association for the professionalism in the engagement and coming to this resolution in the best interest of the membership.
Right. Are we talking about improving the economy and growing the economy? I see limited production taking place in Dominica. How do we intend, if you will, to import less and export more?
I don't agree there's less production. There's significant production taking place. Again, we're not providing enough statistics, enough proper data to the population on the issue of production, agricultural production in the country, the extent of export of agricultural produce in Dominica. Matt, the reality is, at the end of the day, this is a democracy. It's a free market economy. And with all of this World Trade Organization agreements, the single market economy that we have, the economic union that we have within the OECS, you cannot place undue restrictions on imports in no country. What makes the difference in many countries is the consumption habits and practices of the citizens and residents in Dominica. We have the abattoir. We've spent, and thanks to the government of Venezuela, we spent millions building the abattoir. Farmers are raising chickens and raising pigs for slaughter at the abattoir. If we were to make a commitment as Dominicans to consume only local pork and only chicken that had been raised in Dominica, we would cut the food import bill in a dramatic way by one decision. I see bell peppers that we import from Canada and from Latin America. Before this thing get into our port, 2 months pass on them. But you're getting them fresh from our farms. Better quality. But it's not criticism of us. People like to go in a supermarket and like to buy things, and and we're throwing things in the trolley or in the basket. Listen, we have to watch our consumption practices in Dominica. I've been saying so. And I'm not criticizing people. I'm not really having a conversation among ourselves as Dominicans. That we have to consume more of what we produce in Dominica. We have some of the best soaps by the successor DCB company. Why should we buy soaps from other countries that we don't even know of? When we have the best soaps, creating jobs in the economy, bringing in foreign exchange in Dominica, why should we Go and buy any soap, and these soaps that you buy, they dry up your skin in a dry country. The soaps that I buy from DCP, it is good on your skin. When you take a bath and then you clean, you even in a wash rag what you want to use DCP soaps. I mean, I'm serious. There's a black one I use. I use a black one there. You know, it's top quality soap. Even the blue soap that some of you who have little pimples and so all this thing you buy from us, you put a little blue soap on your pimple, it dries it up. So we have to speak about our consumption practices. Government cannot do it alone. We're investing heavily in agriculture. We're supporting hotel expansion. We supported DCP to purchase the company from Colgate, to reopen it. But it is left to us now, the consumers, to determine how successful DCP is going to be. How successful the water company, Twapiton, is going to be. How many of us make a concerted effort to buy the water produced in Dominica? And we're buying water from countries that are rationing water. Hello? I mean, if I were in church, I would say, you know, can somebody say an amen? So we have to speak about these things, our consumption practices and so forth, and to help even our root. You know, when last any one of us in Dominica had a cup of our root? How do we support the farmers in Dailies and the farmers in Good Hope, who are on Pidi Sofre, who are planting our root? The women, most of them are women farmers. How do we get this arrowroot on the shelves in Dominica? Instead of the custard that custard now used to be yellow before, now it is white. It is white. So it tells you that the quality has dropped dramatically. It's no longer custard. Maybe they better drop the C from the custard and so on. So we have to look at our consumption practices, man, in order for us to reduce on the food import bill and increase in production. Because once farmers can get to sell their produce, they'll produce. That's important. Please. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Leila Langford, DBS News. Prime Minister, very little has been said about the construction of a massive building in Roseau near the credit union. Can you tell us whether it is a government or private sector initiative?
You can check it planning department. You can't want me to go on the research with you. You go to the planning department and you'll find out whose building it is, who submitted the plan.
Okay.
I just want to ask, hold on, respect, follow up. A lot of people are pointing fingers, you know, that the building belongs to you or somebody else. Answer the question.
But you see, Matt, this is not a talk show. You see, if we're having a press conference, you ask me a question to give information. If you can get your own research and to get information, to come and ask me, as a prime minister of a country, a building is being built in Roseau. Whose building it is government building or a private citizen? I mean, come on. And this nonsense about this belong to me, and that's bullshit. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. You guys do your research. I'm sure you've done your research. I'm sure you guys know whose building it is. If you go to the registry, you'll see properties in my name. You'll see properties in Dominica in my name. That's what I own. But we have to stop this foolishness in Dominica that this thing of advance. And when this question comes on DBS radio, it concerns me now. That we're advancing questions that are in the sphere of gossip. That's not the better use of my time. If you ask me about the airport, fine. If you ask me about some housing project, it's fine. But you can't ask me as a prime minister, a building is built in Portsmouth, a building in Roseau, whose building it is? I mean, come on. But we have to stop this nonsense in Dominica. It's this, what? Then I sue you guys, and people say, well, the prime minister is suing people. The prime minister shouldn't be suing people because he's the prime minister. He should take that. But nobody stops and asks themselves, what is the impact on the person called the Prime Minister when we make those kinds of allegations? With no facts whatsoever, we make allegations. And because I don't respond, because I don't sue people, and when I do sue, then people go and say, well, there's no press freedom in Dominica, the Prime Minister is suing people, and nobody can speak in Dominica. Trump was just arrested in America, but if I sue somebody, the Americans will say, well, why should you, they put in the report, in the CIA report, the Prime Minister sue somebody in Dominica. But it's not fair.
My other question, you are due to become chairman of CARICOM this year. What are some of the issues you will pursue as chairman? And also, you have stated an intention to leave government in 2024. But many supporters have said they would like to see you continue as Prime Minister. How realistic is that time for your departure?
The issue of CARICOM, obviously, the Haiti will still continue to be a topical issue. So that is a preoccupation of CARICOM. And we're doing some great work working with Canada, the current chairman of CARICOM, to advance the Haiti situation. It is very precarious and concerning to us that will continue. Obviously, with the number of recommendations that are coming out, that came out of the symposium on crime and violence in Trinidad, the implementation of those measures will certainly be still relevant when I become the chairman, so that'll be going to be a critical aspect of it. I'm hoping that we don't have to deal with the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war. This is why I believe that the Russia-Ukraine conflict needs to come to an end. And the G7 needs to demonstrate in a more transparent way efforts to seek a solution to the situation. I believe Russia and Ukraine need to agree to a ceasefire on this thing, to allow cool heads to discuss this matter, because the Russia-Ukraine conflict is having an untold impact on the way of life of every single citizen in our countries. The fact remains that the inflation is highly attributed to the conflict, because everybody now is focusing on supplying Ukraine with ammunition and so forth, and this is taking away people from productive other sectors, and of course Russia and Ukraine are major producers of important commodities that are utilized, that are used to produce things that we consume. The cost of energy, petroleum products. So we need to get this Russia-Ukraine war conflict to come to an end. And I believe that there are leaders around the world who have the capacity and who have the necessary ears of both Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky, so that we can discuss a possibility of a ceasefire in the first instance and negotiating an end to this conflict. Because this has to be done as a matter of urgency. Because how long can we continue with this? This government has been subsidizing the population with electricity rates, with gasoline and diesel and so forth. So we really need to ensure. So I'm hoping that I don't have to deal with this issue by the time July 1 comes. But certainly the crime and violence situation in the region, Haiti would remain top on the agenda for us in my 6 months as chairman of CARICOM. The issue of my departure from the political landscape of Dominica. It's a difficult job, a very difficult job, and I've had to endure a lot as the leader, dealing with so many natural disasters and external shocks. I have been in this business from 27 years as a member of parliament, and it is a very demanding job. and sometimes people don't appreciate the sacrifices I have to make. Sometimes my children have PTA meetings, and I cannot go because I'm at another school dealing with other children's issues. It is a difficult job, but my satisfaction comes from the fact that I believe, and I say so with the greatest sense of humility, that we have helped transform this country over the last 23 years. As always, I've always been at the service of my party and at the service of the people of Dominica. But it is not, I don't want anybody to interpret my announcement of my leaving as an abandonment of my responsibility or I'm tired or anything. I am 50 years old now. I'm feeling stronger now than I felt when I was 27. You understand? And I work harder now than I worked when I was 27 because I feel a sense of urgency to get certain critical things in the economy and the country done that can benefit the people of Dominica more and to create more jobs and higher paying jobs for people and a greater sense of hope for people, especially our young people. So many of them we are sent to universities and we need to give them a better deal and so forth. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But I take it one day at a time, sweet Jesus. Well, it's 2025. Was it 2025, right? 24? 24? 24? 25 or 24? 25. Yeah, so April 2025, Daryl Tate, right? Yeah, but one day at a time, sweet Jesus. So we're good. Yeah. 25, yeah. But we'll see what happens from that content. But I am.
Anyway, we have a serious issue in Dominica with mental health. If you walk the streets of Roseau, the amount of young people you see, it's heartbreaking to see the amount of young people we see walking the streets of Roseau. And in terms of the facilities for them, some say send them to the APU, but do we have the proper facilities for them to be rehabilitated in Dominica? The other issue also, PM, and you can address that, the welfare department and all the situation, the welfare department, they're looking for a new home, but we still see a lot of issues confronting that department as it relates to sexual abuse of minors and all that situation, and a proper place for them. I want you to address the situation, especially the substance abuse and the amount of young people we see walking the streets in Dominica like zombies, and no proper place for them in terms of rehabilitation.
Okay, in terms of your first one, in terms of mental health, first you have to see where mental health fits in. And mental health, it comes under the entire broad, comprehensive approach we have, even regarding of the health sector and its transformation. So it comes under primary health care, which is the foundation of health, of course, and it is an integral part of all the services of primary health care. A couple of years ago, we had mental health care nurses trained, and that still continues. But nonetheless, we've seen it's not just a matter of just mental health in isolation. You have to look at all the other factors that are coming together to result in this present situation that you reference in there. So if you look at the economics of the whole situation, people have been under tremendous stress from the time from COVID-19 onwards, and this has gone on all through the war in Ukraine. We've seen what inflation has done. We've seen how the increased tariffs has resulted in all the increase in prices. We've seen how inflation has affected us tremendously. Then we've seen the social impacts. So let alone the economic impacts, we've seen the social impacts. And all these things ultimately lead to a lot of stress on individuals. And people are struggling to survive within this spread, not just in Dominica, internationally as well. The entire region is under those things. But all of that has compounded the situation, and then we have the situation where mental health. But it's not just a government approach alone. It's not just a Ministry of Health alone. The family has to play its part, the clergy, the church has to play its part. So it's an all-in-society approach to this. But granted, yes, the state has to provide the services, and this is part of what we are actually doing now. This is actually why we have actually approved a location for the welfare department. That has been done recently. As a matter of fact, that was done 2 days ago. And apart from, no, if location was the issue, that we've dealt with, and so that was done as well. But also, in all the bills that we're coming to Parliament with, next week, we're coming with all these domestic violence bills. So all these are different things that we're putting in place that we can address that present situation. Granted, a home for those places. So that is why we have the children who are abused. That's why we have the home at Chances. That's in Jimmy down there. They provide for the children and the underage children who have been abused, those from vulnerable homes, and they have a place for those people. As to you talking about maybe the group above this, maybe from 14 going up to 18, because you don't want to keep them into the Dominica State Prison, and they have to keep them in a place that is suitable for them, apart from the Dominica State Prison and apart from Chances. So that little window or that group there, we're working into this as well. So as for infrastructure, yes, we're going to have that done. That is being part of it. As for the different legislation to handle this part, that comes into Parliament next week, that will be taken care of. As for housing for the welfare department, yes, that is being taken care of. So, and obviously we're handling the economic part of it to make life a little more comfortable for people. So with all of this put together, yes, we should have a society that is more caring as well. And we should have other non-government organizations that can play their part as well. And it's not just a matter of government alone to provide for mental health. We'll do what we can do through the Ministry of Health. We'll do what we can do through legislation. We'll do what we can do to make life more comfortable for people in terms of the economy and so forth. But the general public must play their part. So it's a comprehensive approach.
But what about the place for those who would be on the streets in terms of proper rehabilitation? For example, you have at the psychiatric unit, say they have how many persons there, but you still see them on the streets. When they leave the psychiatric unit, you always, in Roseau, you always see a new one. There's always a new one in Roseau. They live in Portsmouth, Roseau. They live in Grand Bay, Roseau. And, I mean, if you go by the Point Michel bus stop, they just lie down there. There's a guy, I mean, he stinks. And he's just walking there, seriously. And he just comes in your vehicle, and I think around by police headquarters there, they needed to put those guys in proper places. Even some women, it's heartbreaking, and the tourists have seen all of that.
Oh, granted, so I get your point, that obviously you may have those people on the streets here. But it comes back to my point that I was saying. These people have relatives, these people have families, and they have to take an active part in protecting their own relatives and their families, their brothers and their sisters. That is not to say that government will not do what it has to do. We will do what we have to do. But what about the society? What about the public? What about you and I? What are we doing to help these people? Also, there must be non-government organizations that can assist in those regards as well. So it has to be a complete, comprehensive approach from the entire society to deal with such problems. Granted, I agree with the part that, yes, we have to put certain, in terms of infrastructure in place, and that is where government comes in. Those things we will finance. But there are other parts and other non-government organizations that have to play an integral part in this. As a matter of fact, even the APU building and all the different admissions that we have plans in place, we have doctors in place, we have nurses in place, we have all the different functions up there. As a matter of fact, there was one just a couple of weeks ago, well attended. So they're doing their best they can do, the doctors and the nurses and even the mental health staff within the primary healthcare system, within the districts, are doing all what they can do. But we need that little assistance from the society to help us.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that insight. It's Friday. I don't want to keep you too long. However, Prime Minister, I see Curtis has one last question, as well as Matt.
You know, I'm a sportsman myself. National Youth Trials, Matt, a couple of years ago. Prime Minister Skerrit, is government discussing with Cricket West Indies a test match for Dominica this year?
And the lighting of the stadium also, the status.
Okay. We have the lighting project is ongoing. So it's ongoing. It's a matter now for the placing of the fixtures. The old poles were removed. It was a lot of work to get it done. This thing was very strong, as we recognize that most of them survived the hurricane. So tell you how strongly they were installed. So that's ongoing. We will have two one-day international. A test match. A test match in July. The West Indies Cricket Board had written to us in inviting us to make a bid, because that's how they do it these days. Make a bid for hosting of a test match, and we proposed a bid to them to host India for a test match in July, and we are to make a contribution. It's really a contribution. All fairness to the West Indies Cricket Board, when you look at the extent of the economic impact it's going to have. So we're making a contribution of $250,000 to host India in Dominica, and these are the kind of things that we're doing to spur economic activity. So the hotels are going to be filled, the restaurants are going to make money, the taxi operators are going to be making money, the bus drivers are going to make money to carry people, the vendors who will sell along the Winter Park. So it's all effort to encourage economic activity in the country. So we'll be making a contribution. It's really a contribution to the West Indies Cricket Board of $250,000 to host a test match in July in Dominica.
Final question here?
Yes.
You spoke, of course, and you boasted the health system in Dominica, but there are some suggestions that there are some payments outstanding to suppliers for medical supplies. Sorry.
Well, you always have that. I mean, it's you have when you get supplies, there is a time frame within which you pay. We pay. I believe that there has to be a better synchronization of the procurement of pharmauticals, and so that the CMS and the Ministry of Health can work much closer together in ensuring that the payments are made and made in a timely fashion to our suppliers. So you always have this thing, but it is not an issue where suppliers are not giving you supplies because you're owing them beyond the frame. So it, that happens, but once these things are brought to our attention, any amounts that go beyond the time frame to pay, we ensure that from the Ministry of Finance, the government standpoint, that we provide the resources to make those payments. But it is not a matter that is that's out of the world, really. It's really no problem.
You spoke recently as it relates to a cruise village, and the tourism minister's here.
Yeah.
We heard recently, maybe this week, about a vendors arcade. Everybody's, sort of questioning this.
Well, the
how
cruise
soon will
village,
we see this a reality?
The cruise village and the new port, we intend to possibly get the funding from the government of the People's Republic of China for the construction of that port. The necessary applications will be made to the Chinese government in the next few days for this. We have some conceptual drawings, some studies have been done over the years. So we've decided to go the PRC funding route to build this much needed facility. One, a modern port for Dominica with all of the necessary technology, and also a cruise village that is on the cards. In respect to the vendors arcade, the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Urban Development are advancing those plans to build the vendors arcade where the ruined is located. This is government land, and that's always been intention to build the arcade there. We have discussed those plans with the vendors because certainly we have to ensure that the vendors survive, and that's one of the primary objectives, is that the vendors can make money and to take care of themselves and their families. So that's important consideration to us. We need to also ensure that the product which you offer to the cruise ship passengers is at the level at which it should be, and the aesthetics of the tents and the little shacks and so on must be appealing to the eyes. It must be comfortable. Part of the problem, I believe, that the society is highlighting as you know, there's a tourism season, and there's a cruise season. And it was never understood that, as a matter of fact, the vendors would have had to dismount the tents every day at the end of the cruise day. And they go home with their stuff, and they come next morning to set up. So it was never the understanding that those tents or those buildings, those shacks would stay on throughout the year. But that is now staying throughout the year, and I think that is creating some kind of issue to those persons who would like to go and stroll on the bayfront, sit on the bench, have a little ice cream, have something to drink, and socialize, and so on. So that has been taken away from the community. And not only that, but prior, you only had the vendors operating from Fresh Market back to the ferry terminal. To the cruise terminal. Now it is from the cruise terminal down to the ferry terminal. So the entire bayfront has been occupied. And I think that is creating a little challenge for people like you, Matt, who I normally would have seen sitting on the bench there. Yeah, Matt used to do that. I used to see Matt do that. Yeah. Well, I cannot disclose that aspect of it, so I think it's a matter of finding a proper solution. We believe that in consultation with stakeholders, that the vendors arcade would solve part of the problem, and so we need to really move quicker rather, to have this vendors arcade constructed and to give the vendors a permanent location. The reality is, because more people are coming to the country, and non-cruise passengers also patronize those vendors, there's a need for them now to stay there throughout the year, and it is a sign that there's increased economic activity, there's increased visitors in the country, and therefore more people are patronizing these vendors. But it is something that clearly none of us in the country really accepts the standards as it is now, and at the level of maturity of our cruise industry, we should really be at a higher level, and greater uniformity and the aesthetics of the facilities should be way better than that. But it's work in progress. Obviously, all of these things have been hampered, first by the hurricane, and secondly by COVID-19, where resources had to be diverted to other more pressing and urgent matters. But I want to thank all of you for making your time and for your questions. We'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. We have Parliament on Tuesday, and we look forward to the engagement of the Parliament on 5 very critical and important bills. I believe that this is Tuesday next week is a very, very important day for all of Dominica. A comprehensive set of legislation that will protect the elderly, the children, and really removing the discrimination against children. And so there'll be 2 different grades of children or levels of children in Dominica anymore. We only have children in Dominica, and not a segue definition of them and so forth. Yeah. Yes. Kala, you were saying about what are you saying about children? Yeah. Well, you guys will have to put the names on paper and recognize that you can have no definition. So it's children. So all your children are your children. Yeah. And so if you die without a will, they'll all benefit equally under the law. But no, as it is now, they won't be. Yeah. But if you, after Tuesday, if you die without a will, then your wife can't say that this child is not getting anything.
One of the things they need to do, make those stuff available. It's too difficult, for example, to get a copy of those things.
It's in the government website, right? The bill should be in the government website.
But make those things available.
Okay. Well, we take note of that and so on. But they all on government website where you can access them and read them and give your comments on them. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day and good weekend. Thank you.